So that's that. Let's see what else. The other thing that we have been getting the ball rolling on is a program for mock interviews and resume review. So what this is going to look like at the moment, it's still kind of shaping up and we're working on the details, is we'll have an event spanning hopefully many, many time zones, not just the US time zones, where you can sign up for a slot that has an example job description, and it will be a short panel interview with a couple mentors. And at the end of that interview, you'll actually get live feedback on your performance during that interview. So that we're working out what that's actually going to look like in terms of when it's going to be. We're hoping for February, March, but that does depend on availability of mentors. And the other element for that is going to be a resume review process as well. So that's a little bit harder to nail down. We know there are a lot of regional differences. If you're a mentor, or even if you're a mentee and have experience doing resume review, please reach out if you're not a non-US, well, if you're a non-US mentor involved in that resume review, definitely reach out if you're interested in helping out, because we'd love to get a non-US perspective on this. So these two programs are kind of interconnected, but they are going to be separate for the time being. And we're working on some other ideas around that. So that's in progress. Hopefully we'll have some more information about that in the next few weeks to month or so. And honestly, that's pretty much all I have for updates at the moment. I will also be planning out in advance the next set of meetups. And I'm also planning to try to look into doing some pop-ups that cover European time zones and non-US time zones, because I know that there are a lot of people that would love to join, but don't really want to hop on a call at 2 o'clock in the morning. So that's pretty much what I have for now. Thanks very much to everyone who's participating and keeps showing up for this awesome developing program. So the next thing that we have is we're going to do a panel on soft skills. So I'm actually going to be stepping into the background for once and not moderating. So I'm going to hand moderation over to G, aka Packet Squeezins. Hang on, I think I need to ask you to unmute.
Oh, welcome.
There you go. And I'm going to unmute everyone else, so just give me like 1 second to do that. All right, so I think every panelist should be able to turn on video at this point. Just let me know if you can't.
I cannot.
All right, let me see how to fix that. You know, maybe we'll just make all of you co-hosts. That sounds like that would work.
I promise I won't click all the buttons.
It's the
I do.
It's the always works, give everyone admin approach.
Yeah, I promise I won't click all the buttons.
What is the third worst thing that can happen?
Right, did I get everyone? A.Sky, are you there?
Hey, I'm here.
Yes, I can unmute, and I think my video will be yes.
All right, awesome. Packet Squeezins, thank you very much for taking on awesome moderator responsibilities. I will actually hand it over to you.
Great. So welcome, everyone. Today we have a panel on soft skills. Engineers want them. Management wants to be with people who have them. They're essential for getting your job done. Sometimes difficult to come by. Communicating effectively, building relationships, ending conflicts, kind of making your voice heard, hearing other people's voices. You know, tact is key. Different approaches are needed for different situations, and I think we're going to talk about, you know, different approaches different people take. Not everything works for everybody. Hopefully, out of this, you get some tools to add to your, you know, kind of your bag of tricks to help navigate more difficult situations or even just normal situations in your day-to-day life. With us today, we have a great panel. I'm going to ask folks to kind of introduce themselves in turn. So, Mr. Understudy 77, would you kick us off?
Sure, I suppose I can do that. No pressure. I'm Sean, or Understudy 77. I am an ex-IR consultant, a current SOC manager of the Paranoids for Verizon Media. I've done a whole bunch of stuff across the spectrum of from SOC analyst work into IR into leadership. And I also host a weekly podcast called Detections with two other wonderful individuals where we talk specifically about a bunch of blue team stuff and a lot of leadership stuff too, consequently, because that's what I do every day. That's enough about me, though.
Great. No Hackney?
Making sure I'm unmuted. My name's Mick. No hack me on. You can find me on Twitter or anywhere else. I'm a security advisor at Splunk. My background, I've done everything from running security for political presidential campaigns to running a threat intelligence team at the White House to building intelligence programs and security programs. I've briefed everyone you can possibly think of. So soft skills are kind of a daily thing is what we do. So
you've never
happy
briefed
to be a
me.
part of this tonight. I've never been on your podcast. Like, I didn't want to hate it while you were talking, but I've never been on this podcast, and I'm just saying, like, I'm a little.
I will bring you.
Is a year of change. So
I will bring you on the podcast, Mick. Don't worry. You can come on the podcast too. Yeah, you can come on. You can absolutely come on. I got you.
Yeah, soft skills are a crucial part of what we do as security professionals, and I'm hoping to talk a bit about that tonight.
Great. Hey, Sky?
I don't think we can hear you.
There we go.
No, we can hear you now.
It just wasn't unmuted. Yeah, I'm currently the SOC for a nonprofit, and it's been really awesome. I have many years in the world that is internet security providers and their abuse at email. So anybody who's familiar with that, copyrights, all of that fun stuff, that's basically what I did for many years. I managed to escape that. I like to joke that my skill set is that miscellaneous folder that you just dump random stuff in on your folder on your desktop. And then one of the reasons I really love soft skill talks is because my biggest focus and skill is social engineering, and doing that ethically in the workplace is so much fun.
Awesome. And I am Packet Squeezins, or G. I'm currently working as a practice lead doing red teaming, consulting, pen testing, social engineering, kind of all the fun pieces of security consulting, and thankfully very few of the unfun pieces. But in that realm, soft skills are key. You can't win work, you can't maintain work, and you can't communicate effectively with your clients without soft skills. So hopefully it served me well so far. We'll see how it goes tonight, though. So just to kind of kick us off, understudy, what steps do you take to kind of quickly evaluate a situation or kind of choose or develop an approach when you find yourself in an unfamiliar situation or environment?
Sure. This one's actually really interesting because there's kind of two pieces worth talking about to it. And one is just a word of advice I try to give people whenever they enter any new job or any new situation. And that's that sometimes it's really good to just shut up and listen for a little while and understand the culture that's around you. I'm sure throughout, everybody's work life or many people's work life, they've taken those personality tests that say you are this, you are that, you are whatever. I genuinely get dominant personality, bull in a china shop, the whole thing. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's who I have to be all the time, though. And that's something that I think a lot of people miss. Like that whole concept of like, I am who I am. People are way more complex than that. So if you can take a minute in any situation, social environment or any of that to listen and understand kind of what that culture looks like between individual teams at an organization, so on and so forth, you can go a really long way to kind of finding out how you fit within that culture rather than trying to break the norm. Because how each individual fits into a culture will always be more important than the individual value that one person brings to the table. I'll pass for somebody else now.
No, to touch on it a little bit, I completely agree. So during my time at the White House, one of the things we did, it was called backbenching, where you went to a briefing and you just sat in the back row and you just shut up and you just watched the meeting go on. Like when you hear about the expression fly on the wall, that was you. And being able to do that, and at first, like, it's an ego thing. You're like, oh man, that's fucked up. Like, I'm sorry, that's messed up. Like, I'm here, I should be briefing. And now it's you get more out of taking in how meetings run in a new environment than anything else. You get to learn how meetings flow, personalities that are already dominant. You might be the dominant one, like understudy mentioned. We all test the same way. We are persuader controller, or whatever personality type you fit into. But it's the experience of being able to just observe how a meeting goes as an observer, not as a person running it, is super, super important.
Hey, Sky, would you like to chime in?
I'd want to add in that, yeah, I'd love to. One of the things that happens, so unfamiliar social environment, like most of us take that as a workplace. Sometimes that's just simply being on a phone call with, take for example today, calling my internet provider because my internet's been out for 2 days and I really, really hope that they're going to give me a credit because I'm paying for the business class. Being able to listen, pay attention to tone, indications of being annoyed or being, oh goodness, like being aware of everything is really, really important. I don't think it's just listening to what people are saying. It's observing how people interact, body language, the tone that they use, sometimes the absence of tone. I think that's the most frustrating thing for people who really dial into that portion. I know I'm very much trying to understand the subtext to what people are saying. And there's a lot of people out there, especially in tech, that are just the most poker-faced, monotone people, and just ask questions. People like to talk about themselves. Just be that person, buy somebody a drink, take someone out for lunch, be the receiver of what people are telling to you, and take notes. I think there are actually a lot of projects that are geared around creating a social, especially work social knowledge base, especially for the people who are in contact sales. I think it's really, really useful because I'm horrible with names. So if there's someone really, really important, I gotta make sure I know who this person is, their name, how to pronounce their name, a little bit about them. And that goes in my OneNote, searchable, quick and easy. That way, the next time I'm in a meeting, especially now that it's all virtual, I can just bring that up. I feel like, oh yeah, reference it. How are your kids doing? Oh yeah, you have a dog, not a cat. All of those little things are now made easier by technology, and make the use of it as much as you can.
So can we actually expand? I'd like to expand on that a little bit, because 2020 and 2021, we are mostly virtual. So a lot of those concepts that we're familiar with of social cues are all different behind a camera specifically, as opposed to being right next to somebody in person. And that becomes really interesting. And one of the things that I usually encourage and I try to do myself, although, it gets easier with time, I think, is regular check-ins and reach outs just for no reason other than hey, how are you? It's a tough time right now. What's going on? I just wanted to check in, because if the key to this, and any of the people who do red team social engineering, I'm sure will back me on this, relationships make progress. As opposed to, I need this, but you have no relationship, you're much less likely to get progress than when you have a personal relationship and you've taken the time to get to know somebody at a fundamental level, understand who they are, the culture that they have, and all that. And I think it's even more important in an online environment where we don't have those hallway interactions anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely key. And one thing that I've found that tends to work, especially with Zoom culture or whatever you want to call it, is kind of being self-deprecating or putting myself in a position where hey, they're kind of they're what are they doing? That's ridiculous. you know, just being silly or kind of goofy on a call, or like putting myself in a, you know, kind of a, I want to say disadvantageous position, but, you know, basically breaking like a social norm without making it like weird or inappropriate. That I find that helps get people to engage, even if it's in a way like, what are you doing? Like, come on. It's like, okay, you turned your video on, you talked to me even just to tell me that I'm being stupid. Now we can actually have some kind of conversation build from there.
I mean, humor makes the world go round,
yeah.
And it's really beneficial towards relationships if you can have a little bit of fun. Just, you know, make sure you know the person to know what kind of humor will land.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to.
That is very important.
Yeah, to build on the personal relationships you have, you know, what we do, whether it's blue team or red team, it's a trust community. And those personal relationships you build, I'm not calling Google, or I'm not calling, you know, Yahoo or Oath or Verizon Media Group, whatever group it is it called now. I'm sorry, I forgot the proper name for it.
You're fine. Everybody else forgot too.
Yeah. But, you know, I'm not calling them. I'm calling my friend understudy over there. You know, I'm calling Sean, hey, I got this weird thing. Can you help me out? So those personal one-on-one calls, and then I'll be honest, I got a friend, a buddy of mine, Scott Roberts, a super awesome guy, gave me a call out of the blue. Hey, how's it going? And, you know, whether you're a red team or blue team, your first thought is, all right, man, what do you need? Right? And it goes back to your relationships. Are they transactional or interactive? And it depends on what kind of conversation you need to have. And I think what you need to develop are your interactive communication skills, because I think those are more effective.
Well, I mean, let's be honest.
I think we've talked a lot about.
Nope, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just wanting to give, because I know the people that are here and listening are people who are wanting to grow their skills. It sounds really silly, but Animal Crossing is probably one of the best examples of maintaining consistent relationships that are positive on both ends without being that transactional that Nohak mentioned. Asking people to do a tiny thing that you know is achievable on their end is a great way for them to actually feel better about you. It's weird asking someone to do something for you, like it improves the relationship. But I recommend trying to remember, or playing the new Animal Crossing, those little, like, it kind of trains you on how to maintain consistent relationships without it being a burden. I mean, granted, don't be a jerk and dig pitfalls underneath people. Like, that's rude. But like,
just maybe one or two.
The core message there, just one or two, yeah. But the core message that sends is really important, especially if people are like, I know I'm awkward, I don't know where to start. That's the start. The start is those asking for a small favor that you can quickly reciprocate, and then slowly building that back and forth with a specific individual. Try to find people on teams that are the social hub of that team. I can't recommend that enough, because then they will bring you in to their meetings. They will bring you into their social group. And that is where you build those relationships, where you can actually ask someone or explain something to someone without them getting upset. Or, I mean, I'm literally living through this right now with a vulnerability project. So I'm like, this is one of those things. I'm like, yes, it is very, very important to have that bond. If your company doesn't do it already, especially with remote learning, I recommend like the Jackbox games. It's super, super easy. It's a low user skill. It's a great way to bond, kind of like Apples to Apples, a more PG version of Cards Against Humanity. Those types of games are really, really great way to build that, that social bar between you and another person, especially another team. Yeah, camaraderie. There's a word for that. To build a camaraderie amongst different teams. And if no one's doing it, this is the same thing that every time I see someone post online that I want to do D&D, but I don't know where to start. DM, start it yourself. People will come to you. Be the one that people come to, instead of expecting someone else to create something that you can then attend and participate in. So sign up for Jackbox Games, have people invited. Be like, hey, yeah, I'm doing this social thing for lunch. Come join. I'll explain how it works. And they will forever be happy and excited about that kind of thing. It's like one of those memory things that kind of locks into people's minds. And then you'll get that. You'll get that, hey, DM, I mean, from a true blue team, it's so important to be like, hey, so I was pairing with this one dev, and I think that they're hard coding credentials and somehow avoiding our tools. Like, cool. All right, I'm going to wait a week so it doesn't associate with you. And then I'm going to go in and get this addressed. Being able to have that confidence and people reach out to you, it's so, so important for getting stuff done and actual real security work in terms of blue team.
Yep.
We used to do escape rooms when people were in person. We've taken to Among Us games since then, but I love the Animal Crossing reference. That's phenomenal. Somebody had asked too, something that, like, asked someone to do something that he or she can do to help build the relationship. And if I can elaborate my perspective on that, it's basically like building like small favors between people of like, hey, I need this thing, can you help? And then providing a sense of accomplishment of, hey, I'm really glad, like, thank you so much for that help. That was really appreciative. I really appreciate it. And opening up those lines of communication through this concept of like back and forth kind of sharing stuff. But, you know, to loop around to the question, like, we're a long way away from the days where technology people sit in rooms by themselves and don't talk to anybody. I cannot think of a job in this industry for the most part that is not a service-driven industry. It doesn't matter if you're at a service provider or at an internal company anymore. Like, you are providing a service to someone, and you need to be able to kind of meet that service and have a relationship with those people if you want them to do the things that you need. We did a podcast recently with a friend of mine, Masha, who runs our behavioral engineering team. Talking specifically about behavioral, I see you, Mick. Talking about behavioral engineering and like the importance of behavioral engineering in the workplace now, and how much that goes into getting the appropriate behaviors you want out of users rather than slamming them with security education that doesn't work. But as far as like the steps that you take, and I mean, I'll be a straight, like, it's practice, like public speaking in general, empathy, all these things that like you may not have. And I'll be straight. Like, I am not a naturally empathetic person. Like, I learned empathy over time. Like, pretty much everything is a skill. You can learn it. If you're not a particularly great speaker, practice. You can learn to do that. If you're not a particularly empathetic person, practice. You can learn to do that. Pause and think about those things. And that's, you know, when you get into an unfamiliar situation, you will have learned the toolkit to help you handle those things through your own practice. Yeah.
Practice does make, you know, competent, basically. The way we always did it, you know, kind of when I was coming up in consulting was you'd buddy system. You'd pair folks up, put them on teams and say, okay, these are the folks you need to emulate, you need to learn from. Look at what they do, look how they handle these situations. And then as you kind of build into that, you give people more and more speaking opportunities. It's kind of a very structured way to do it. I think it also works in, you know, in industry, not just consulting. I know one of the things that I struggled with early on was feeling like everything was a high stakes, you know, meeting or high stakes interaction. Most of the things you do probably aren't, you know, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but most of the interactions I'd say you have on a given day, you know, especially if you're, you know, kind of starting out, are probably lower stakes than you may fear, you know, unless you're working with a, you know, in a really negative or, you know, bad environment, most people aren't going to know or care about any minor mistakes you do or, you know, anything that you like flub, so to speak, you know, and it's kind of getting over that hurdle of caring about that. That was a big deal for me, and it was just doing it was the way to get around that and get comfortable with it. You know, no.
Yeah, it's just, I can't impress enough that like there is no secret to like any of the people like Mick or me or any of the people who go out and speak at conferences and stuff all the time. There is no secret to like being good at that. Like, it is literally practice, and learning how to do it.
There's I'll plug B-sides because I help organize one. B-sides are usually pretty low stakes as far as that goes. That's kind of one of the reasons that they exist is, hey, get out there and learn to speak. And they're all very welcoming and generally friendly to newbies.
I see Nadim's raised his hand. Do you have a question, Nadim? You want to type it in the chat? Yeah, I mean, to echo on that, I've been in situations, I've been in places where you're briefing folks, and it is high stakes, and it's really no different. You're being asked a question because you're the subject matter expert on a particular thing, and I think what's more important, realizing that internally, and it's going to take you a hot second to do it. It's not an overnight thing. We're like, yeah, I guess I am an expert. Like, it's something all of us struggle with every day. But beyond that is, cool, now that I have your attention because I am this genius about this stupid, weird niche thing that nobody really cares about, but like right now you got to care about it. You have to be able to make them understand what the problem is, what the impact is, why they need to care, and what they can do in about 3 minutes. That's your jam, and get better and better at that. Because be honest, I've briefed people in the situation room, and you got about 5 minutes. And when I say you got 5 minutes, you got about 3 minutes, because the last two, I got a meeting I gotta run out to, and I've tuned out. So clear, succinct communication, that is gonna save you, because you can be the smartest kid in the room, and I'm sure all of you are, but unless you can make everyone understand you, you're just that nerd that stares at his shoes or her shoes.
I'm gonna add on to this, Mick, and this is actually kind of hitting our third question on the list. So I'm gonna drop that question because this is right in line with how I was going to answer that question. How do you effectively communicate important technical information to less or non-technical stakeholders while avoiding the I can't dumb this down any farther? And the reason why I bring that up is because, Mick, and I'll ask, do you ever go into that room unprepared? Unless absolutely necessary.
I'm not unprepared, because we've been doing this for a hot minute, right? Yeah. We're not unprepared. We can talk out our ass about a million different subjects, but give me an idea of what we're talking about that day.
Yep.
I'm going to do background, who you're talking to. If you know who your audience is, you better know what they've done, how long they've been there.
Thank you.
Know who you're briefing, know your audience, know what kind of brief it is. If it's a technical brief, it goes one way, right? If it's not, it goes another way.
So that's the point I wanted to hit on that one. What you're saying is less important than who you're saying it to. Because knowing who you're saying something to is how you're going to know that they care about these things. I'm not going to go to the CEO of my company screaming about security risks. I'm going to go to the CEO of my company and I'm going to translate security risk into business risk. And I'm going to talk about the potential impact to my business. Like, that's the approach. You have to know your audience if you want to effectively communicate something important to people who aren't you or aren't technical, right? If you don't understand that audience, you can't put it in words that they're going to care about. And if you can't put it in words that they're going to care about, you're going to lose them long before your 3 minutes is up.
Yes. Frequently, that's business risk, product risk. Figure out, like, are you talking to a director of finance, an accountant, an auditor? Figure out what makes them tick, what's going to give them agita or make them care about it. Try to relate it back to that. Even if it's kind of like, kind of tenuous, you still made a connection there, and it's certainly better than nothing.
Oh yeah, and different people are going to care about different things. So like if I'm trying to get the guys who run my service desk to take something on because I need their help with something, they're not necessarily going to care about business risk. They're going to care about the amount of work that makes for them. And then I need to speak in terms of, all right, so right out the gate, this is the anticipated workload that I have. Now let's talk about, can we do this? Is there any way we can support you or help offload other things? And approach it in a very, like, most conversations like that need to be approached in an almost partnership-ish environment and way, where you're not above somebody. Like, you are the subject matter expert. One of my favorite things about consulting, to Mick's point, was, oh, hey, you're going to go do this IR. You're going to use this tool. I've never used that tool. Well, we brief in 30 minutes, so you better sound like an expert in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, that was one of my favorite parts about doing that job, right? Because you have to be the expert. But at the same time, you still have to work with that client or that person that you need something from, which means you need to understand their motivations or what they care about. That way you can tune the conversation. Go ahead.
I think that's so important. So when people talk about the C-suite, they tend to talk, and I refer to them as the powers that be, because it always makes me laugh. But people talk about them like they're not people. People talk about them like they're this high above. Yes, their decisions make a huge impact on what you have to do on a daily basis, but they're people. I haven't gone to an organization where, especially in security, I can't speak for other verticals, but in the security vertical, it's actually pretty easy to be like, hey, you know what? I'd like a one-on-one. I would love 15 minutes of your time to just hear from you. And again, this is talking about getting that listening. And then they're talking to you about their concerns and that how they see security and how they're worried about this and X and Y and Z. And then you can actually then, okay, well, that means that not now, but the next time I have a conversation with them, I can mention, hey, personally, and speak from actually what's happening to me right now is, hey, the MacBooks on our network, we do not have the software to secure them properly, and they're so expensive. Think about that. Or why do we have them on our network?
Maybe we should switch everything to MacBook and then have way less of a threat landscape.
Either way, no, I'm serious. Like, personally, like, I don't.
You know, conversation for another day. So
on the podcast,
my last CISO, dude was fantastic. He cracked me up though, because I sat kind of at the end of the row where his office was, and one day it was probably like 3 o'clock. I'm like, I've worked a lot. I'm gonna leave early today. I'm starting to pack up. He walks out of his office and he goes, Sean, and he just goes like this. And I'm like, shit, what did I do? What was I even working on that he would know about? So I walk up there and he walks over. He hand builds arcade. He used to hand build arcade cabinets. He walks over to his arcade. He goes, hey, beat me at something. So we just spent like 45 minutes playing arcade games, and just playing different games and stuff. Like, ultimately getting to your point, Scott, like, they're people. Like, having human conversations with them works the same way as having human conversations with anybody else.
Yeah. And
human connections are key in our business.
They absolutely are. And actually, circling back to, I think Nadeem dropped some kind of a point in the chat, and correct me if I'm kind of interpreting this wrong, but, how do you get the kind of the time or even the opportunity to make connections with folks? It sounds like you might be trying to break into the field, and that's tough. That can be really tough, especially now. There aren't meetups in person. You're not going to be able to go to conferences in person, but you've got all these Discords for DEF CON, various B-sides, Blue Team Village, attending events like these, keeping an eye out for various social events. There's game nights for a lot of these things. Trying to do online meetups. It's going to be a tough time right now. I think, the same opportunities aren't there, but there are still some opportunities. And I think persistence and keeping an eye out towards, how can, what opportunities are there for me to try to make those connections, and just kind of pursuing those is probably the way to approach that. It's how I would approach that. Also, open BSD laptops, that's what I'm going to recommend for everybody.
I'd say that, honestly, the work from home has been more helpful. I normally wouldn't have had the opportunity to attend as many conferences or participate in something like this if it was held if it was held locally versus remotely. So I personally think that this is opening up opportunities for people who can communicate online. But like understudy said, like it's a skill. Like you have to have a skill, practice and practice and practice communicating, using gifts, making sure you can kind of gauge your humor right. All of those little things add up to being able to build a bond over online or over the phone or video without having to actually have someone have that conversation in person. I know that there's a lot of people who are actually more awkward in person than they are online. And this is actually a benefit to some rather than a negative. Though I will say I really do feel sorry for the people who are true extroverts. This is not a happy time for those people. So
I miss
feel
the intimacy, though, of like not online conferences. Like that's the thing that I found that I miss the most is there's a specific intimacy of being in person where you can like break off and like just go talk to like this group for a while and then go talk to that group for a while. And that's something that I have found that like the online thing hasn't really replicated yet, is that intimacy and that real like human connection feeling where you can get like personal at like 3:00 in the morning at the bar. I also miss like speaking at real conferences where I can gauge an audience reaction, because it's so much easier to speak when you know what people are like. Are they sleeping right now? Like if they are, maybe I need to add a joke in here or something, or I should just shut up. Go ahead, Mick.
I think that's the hard part is I think the saying is like the body needs food, the mind needs people. And I think those in-person interactions, my big hallmarks, like it's January, bro, I'm sad as shit. Like we're not going to ShmooCon. Like it's not going to be a thing in a couple weeks. Like it's just not happening. So those late night, we're at that circle bar or over at Russia House. It's those intimate moments in person that you can't replicate online. And I imagine we'll get back to that. But if you're doing that now, it's a shift in your communication style. It's a shift in those interactions. Like you've heard this call for the past, 45 minutes or so. We're trying super hard not to talk over each other. And you've been on Zoom calls for the past year. That's exactly what happens. So it's just a way to shift the way you communicate to people.
That being said, we're doing a pretty good job, I think, at least so far. Because we've all been on Zoom calls a lot over the last year. Like we have learned the skill of not everybody talking over everybody.
Skill by attrition. Wanted to kind of steer it a little bit. One of the things that have been asked was, how can you work effectively with someone, coworker, client, vendor, whoever who, is perhaps more abrasive or just kind of unwilling to just be professional. The kind of run into these folks who are like, well, it's just the way I am. Like everyone's got to deal with me, or like, they'll get used to it. I admittedly used to be that person. It took me a long time to get out of that rut. But my own experience with that has been, what got me out of that was kind of realizing I was getting turned down for opportunities, and I was actually starting to alienate people around me just because of my behavior. So I kind of worked myself out of it. I guess how would you guys work on how do you deal with those people in your own day-to-day interactions?
Scott, do you want to kick that one off?
Yeah. So we all have a coworker that just, I don't want to see this because I know that there's probably another question that relates to just like inappropriateness, but sheer like not understanding their role or not being perceived as competent for the work that they're supposed to be doing for their title. That's probably the nicest way I could put that. I mean, not nice way, because I'm just going to be blunt here, is we all have a coworker who is just useless. It happens, we all have it. Sometimes they're useless and horrible to deal with, which is even worse. Sometimes they're either or. Honestly, I feel like the people who are difficult are some of the easiest to deal with, if that makes sense, because you know what they want. There is someone who has an ego. They just want platitudes. They just want to be told that they know what they're doing. If I am, let's just say, if I have an interest in staying or extending my career at a specific company, and that person is in leadership and is friends with someone, and I'm understanding of that relationship, yeah, you know what? I will play to their ego. I don't care. You know what? It doesn't really bother me. If I don't care, if I'm like, you know what? I have a timer on this particular position. I am not staying in, let's say, ISPs for more than 3 years. I'm going to take my 3 years of security experience and I am outie, which is real. Then no, I don't care if I'm going to piss you off. You can't fire me. The whole joke of the archer, you're not my supervisor. You don't have any direct power over me. Granted, like someone might talk to me and be like, you need to be nice to people. And I'll be like, okay, well, they need to be competent. And that typically ends the conversation and moves on. It moves on. I am not one. The only time I would recommend playing nice, quote unquote, is when you know that you want to stay at that organization or you know you want to outmaneuver that specific person. Otherwise, just be blunt. I mean, don't be a jerk. Don't be mean. But you can be blunt. You can be honest. And people are going to get taken aback. There's going to be a hullabaloo happening in the background. But as long as you're not lying or misconstruing facts or take your personal feelings into reality, you're going to be fine. There's nothing they really could do at that point. I have actually called people incompetent to their faces multiple times because it was a fact. So it's one of those things. I want a quick aside on the specific question. Setting a precedent for your personality is really, really important. I make sure at an organization, I set a precedent first thing of being like intensely honest. I do not take I don't pull any punches when it comes to those first interactions in a nice-ish way. And then further on, when it needs to happen, there's a precedent of me saying these things and people go, oh, okay. Instead of, oh no, clutch the pearls. Oh, this is the most horrible thing. She's saying so mean things about someone who we think is good at their job, who is horrible and everyone hates. So it is what it is.
That consistency, I think, is key. In setting that precedent, it will serve you well. You know, in well, any interaction really. You know, that kind of establishes that, okay, this person is hopefully very professional, very honest, and probably not willing to take crap when crap comes up. And that will also mean that you tend to get less crap if that's kind of the precedent you've set of like, if you bring me bullshit, I will not take it. Most people will stop bringing you bullshit.
Mick, you had something?
Going back to the question, it goes back to how you communicate with people, right? Yeah. And you're gonna run into some folks. I think all of us on this panel, and again, I don't want to speak to everyone, but kind of. If you've been in this career for a while, you were probably that asshole. Like, you were probably, I'm the smartest cat in the room. Can't nobody tell me shit. And there was a time that may have been true, but you're going to have to get over that ego and realize that, that's not you anymore. Or if you have that person on your team and interact with them, you realize that, again, going back to, we communicate two ways, right? It's an interactive conversation or it's transactional. If you think you're the smartest cat in the room, then cool. You go do X, Y, Z. I'm going to need that by Friday, and I'm not going to talk to you until then because doing so upsets me. And then that's your interaction with that person. I think that served me well. And to be honest, when I was that asshole, it probably would have served other folks would have treated me that way, a very transactional relationship. It's very task-oriented. And honestly, you find that with people that haven't had that realization how to work on a larger team.
And I think, I'm going to touch on that a little bit more. I want to give kind of the like my leadership opinion of this question, you know, working effectively with coworkers who are abrasive or otherwise unwilling to be more professional. And my leadership answer to that is, as a leader, that is not acceptable behavior on my team. That is something that I cut off very quickly on my team. And I do not allow. That does not mean that I do not have to work with people who are like that, because not every other leader, you know, believes in that. And I'm a big proponent that the rock star or the most technical person in the room isn't worth shit if they don't get along with people. Like, the sum of the many will always outweigh the one person who happens to be really good in the way that I organize a team. So it's a leadership problem, first off, to me, if you have that person. And if you have a competent leader, that's a conversation, especially like if you're dealing with somebody from another team. You can do conflict resolution yourself if you want to, but you can also feel free to approach your leader, and it will be their responsibility to work with other leaders to try to solve that problem. If the leaders in the organization are not willing to solve that problem, that may not be the organization that you want to be in. That being said, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no. I just wanted to add on to that because I can't agree with you enough. As someone who, because not everybody is lucky enough to have a boss like you, clearly. Just literally, but from what you said, that
pressure.
you are a boss that I would like to work with.
No pressure.
No, it's a fact. Granted, unfortunately, it is a low bar. There's a lot of InfoSec managers that are terrible. They want the people who sound the smartest, that impress and seem super, super cool. Oh, yeah, I have this set up. I have very little patience for that personality type.
I do too.
I am honest. I will always go to my boss first in a very polite manner, explaining, hey, this, and this. If they go, oh, that's just the way they are, I'd be like, okay, that means this level of shittiness, just to be honest, is acceptable in the workplace. Game on. I guarantee you the other person is not going to win this. Like, there are a few things that I am competitive in, and that's one of them. Especially as a woman, like, it's one of those things where I'm like, you're gonna say something. This actually ties into the next question that I tagged on to, which is, what do you do when things get weird and inappropriate? And I'm like, it depends on the workplace. If I have a great boss, I have a great work culture, I'm going to just go through the proper channels. It'll get taken care of, and then I move on with my life. In many, many, many workplaces, that is not the case. It's not a place where you can report something and anything will happen. And honestly, especially information security, like, I do not have the patience to deal with sexism in the workplace. I don't have the patience to deal with snide remarks, and I am way meaner than all of you people. So if we all play by the rules, or no one does. Like, that's the rule that I live by. I happily will play within the rules, though.
So I have always taken the approach that, you know, my teams control themselves. And if somebody else wants to be a jackass, that's on somebody else. But we will always deliver the highest efficacy of professionality possible. It does not mean we will not stand up for ourselves. It does not mean that we will not say no. It does mean that even if we've said no 100 times or somebody's consistently an asshole, we will continue to extend bridges and continue to work for them. And I will continue to handle that situation how I have to handle that situation as I go up the ladder until that situation is handled. That shit can take a long ass time, which is one of the reasons why being transparent about it is relatively important. But I have always been we will be collaborative, period. If someone's an asshole to you, you cannot be an asshole back. You can come talk to me about it and I'll solve it within reason. Like, if somebody pops off, like, I get it. I'm not going to pretend that I've never done it either. Like, I lose my temper. But, you know, to talk conflict resolution, right? So like, if you have somebody who's abrasive or unwilling, and you have leadership who is not going to handle that, and you have a situation where it's a place that you want to be and potential exists there, what can you do about that? To Mick's point, and it's a really good point, the more transactional you can make that relationship, the better. Hey, here's a process. This is how I give you things, and this is how you give me things back. That can go a long way. It won't remove the tension, but you'll still be able to function and get shit done.
But it limits it. Exactly.
In a business, functioning and getting shit done is important. Hopefully the tension will go after time. You can try the direct approach and have direct conversations, but some of those individuals are just going to be like, no, I don't give a shit. Fuck you.
Yeah.
And
so
to be honest, like, it's a fault of theirs. It's a fault of all. Because again,
exactly.
We were probably all that asshole at one point, but it's the maturity, one, in your career, two, you as a person that, like, man, look, I got a responsibility. I'm kind of a jerk. And until they realize that the transactional relationship is, hey, look, we need X, Y, Z done.
Yep.
This is the job. We need to put the team in the best possible position to be successful. Your role in that is to do this. So can you do this? That's it.
So here is part 2 of that. Don't do in-person conversations. Do like text or email-based conversations.
Oh, man, write that shit down. Write that shit down.
Document fucking
DYA.
everything at that point. Like, to an earlier point, you control you. So if review time comes around and you're not making the ground that you need to make because somebody else isn't willing to work with you, as long as you can show that you have made every attempt to bridge that gap, you have done everything you can do, and you are pushing that forward. If it negatively affects you, it's documented and you can address that appropriately. But legit, in that situation, document everything. And it's a pain in the ass to do it, but it's worth it because you have to. The other piece of it, and I just kind of want to respond to Plug a little bit, is look at those situations and ask yourself if maybe you had a hand in that relationship as well. I'm not saying you did. We're coming at this specifically from the perspective that, like, you're in the right. But it doesn't hurt to look at those interactions and figure out maybe there's something that you could do better, or maybe there's something that maybe you came off like an asshole or you weren't appropriate. Yeah. It never hurts to, like, look in the mirror.
So I'll be an asshole. Those conversations you have, 100%, you are not in the right 100%.
Agree.
You know, everybody's watched The Mandalorian. Look, one person's terrorist, another person's freedom fighter. I might be from Alderaan, and Sean might. Anyway, it's just, look, their perspective, they're gonna think they're right, and learning to see other folk how they come at things. That's just part of growing as a person. And even if their perspective is completely wrong, it's what they believe, and you don't have to agree with it, but just respect that's where they're coming from, and that's why they're interacting in this way with you.
Yep. Yeah. And don't let anger kind of lead you. Like, if you get pissed, walk away. Play an instrument, have a smoke. I know that's not a cool thing to do anymore, but if you do smoke, like, have a smoke. Do whatever it is that you need to do to go calm down and come back to it, because you control you. And you don't want to be the one who gets in some shit because somebody's not willing to work with you. Like, that's not the way that you want that relationship to go, and you don't want it to come down on your head. So, like, walk away until you've calmed down and just try not to engage.
Yeah. Being the more level-headed person is always the right choice. You know, how easy that is highly variable. I've also had success, and this kind of goes to making things more transactional, but just having a very blunt conversation with the person. Like, hey, this isn't working. There's a problem here. How do we solve this? And that often comes down to, sometimes the result is we don't like each other or each other's approach for whatever reason, but we can agree that, yeah, we're just going to make this very business only, transactional. I don't like you, you don't like me. Let's just keep it. Let's keep our interactions to a minimum and keep them professional. That way we're not getting bent out of shape over each other.
I really, really want to live in the world where I can say that has worked for me, but I can't. Because every major experience that I've had where, like, I have hunted somebody down to try to be like, yo, I sense something is wrong. Can we talk through this? How does this work? Has, unfortunately for me, not necessarily for you, never been met with success. And I really want that to work because I really want to feel like we're all adults and we can just talk to each other and be honest and open.
Yes,
it's never worked
well. We can do that. As current events have demonstrated, we can rationalize.
Right? Like we're really good at speaking to each other and finding common ground. That's just
again, to echo that, you cannot. That's what you need to do. Is just look. To Packett's point, we're both adults. All right, let's have an adult conversation, but realize during that conversation at some point you're probably gonna get pissed.
Yeah.
Take a break, walk away, have a cigarette, whatever it is, play your guitar hanging on the wall, weirdo. But do those things.
It saves space, okay? It saves space.
Yeah, but
keep on it.
And if the result of that conversation is you aren't both adults, well, now you know. And
now you know, right?
You can move on from that, and it definitely won't work all the time. And it's not always worked for me. I have had some success with it, though. Somebody dropped in the chat, and I'd copied it out. What if you're burnt out on egos and personalities, and you just don't want to deal with confrontation, and you just want to kind of keep your head down and do your job?
Don't work in security. Hi-oh!
Contract work. No, I can't say that enough. Be a contractor, especially in the SOC blue team. You have a 12 to 18-month contract, and then you're done. And you move on to the next organization. You do your job. You move on. You don't have to deal with any of the politics. You've had
way better experience as a contractor than I did. Then.
Yeah,
I will say this: I did have a good experience because I was completely ignored, and it was beautiful. I was completely ignored for the 10 months that I was a contractor in that SOC team, and I loved it. It was great. I did my job, and I moved on, and they were sad to see me go, but there was other reasons for me to leave, and I'm very happy where I am now. So I mean, that's what I would recommend.
If you're in a culture that you feel has no hope of changing because it is a bunch of egos and a bunch of problems, it never hurts to look for a different culture. However, I want to give a word of warning to anybody, and I give anybody this word of warning. Be very careful not to take your bias with you. Because one of the things in a good cultured environment, a lot of people look for is somebody who's going to meet that culture. If you come off in the interview like you're bitter and you hate everybody and you think it's just going to be a shit show and you hate working with other people, you're bringing that bias of a bad experience with you, and it's likely going to cost you the opportunity to have a good one. And it's really, really important to recognize your own negative bias, accept it, and try really hard to take things at face value and as they are. Ask hard questions, by all means. Ask very hard questions about culture and things like that, but don't let your experiences color and potentially ruin the next good one that you could have.
Yeah. And it may take a job search. In certain avenues may be closed off. I would say that management in every place I've worked, dealing with bullshit, as we recently talked about, and jumping on grenades is a huge part of it.
That's the job.
A non-zero amount of my job is jumping onto calls where someone's being either a complete asshole or blowing up about something and diffusing the situation. It's that's that confrontation that's literally my job. So some things you can't avoid, but I don't.
One of the conversations. One of the sayings y'all had in the military was, when no one has your back, it's time to move your back.
I really thought you were going to say shut up and color, and I was going to say I quit jobs.
No, I was not a Marine. Hi-yo! But the thing is, look, find an environment where you jive with the people that work there, and understand that the role we've taken in life, the security world, there is no, I'm gonna do this job for 25 years. That kind of mindset is really gone. You're gonna have balance to a lot of jobs in your career. If you're gonna be in environments and situations where some are better than others. If you're in an environment that doesn't jive with who you are, where you're fitting, or your communication style, or the team you're on, if it doesn't get better after you brought it up, then find a new team. It's no different than any other aspect of your life. to bring it back to communication, if you're on a team where you don't communicate, the back and forth is just doesn't work out for you. You've got the skill set. Go find somewhere else to work.
Yeah.
Don't burn the bridge, but like, I'm probably the wrong person to say that.
I can't
but if
say that
you
either.
do,
I'm never going to work.
Look, every single person who listens to this, every single person who's in this industry, and I say this to people a lot because I think people need to hear it. Every one of you brings something unique and valuable to the table. Understand that thing about yourself. Not the specific, but understand that you are valuable and understand that you have worth, which means you have a right to the kind of, having some things that you want or being in a position that is good for you, and you are not stuck somewhere. You are not worthless, and you are not whatever this industry regularly can downtrodden people to think that they are. So like, don't forget that you have value, and don't forget, especially like when you're interviewing and stuff, that you have a say in where you work. Like, it's a mutually exclusive relationship. It's not one-sided. Yeah. End of soapbox.
Fair enough. Sorry, what was that?
Should we move on?
Yeah, I was actually going to steer us towards what I put in here that no one signed up for, solely so I could tell a particular story. What's the most ridiculous thing that you've had to do to kind of either win someone over or diffuse a situation? I actually bribed someone with a suitcase full of tasty cakes once. We had a client where the guy was just being a complete jerk, basically, not unhelpful, massive blocker. I live in the Northeast of the U.S. Somebody had basically kind of dropped it like, hey, that guy used to live in the Philly area. He really likes tasty cakes. You can't get him out here. So I literally filled my entire suitcase for that week full of tasty cakes. I left it on the table, and the guy like rolled in for our Monday meeting. He's like, what's that? I just flipped it open. He like looked at it and was like, is that for me? I just nodded, and he said, okay. He just, he took him out and took him over to his desk, and all of a sudden all of our requests got fulfilled. We still didn't like interacting with each other, but we reached an understanding through bribery.
There's a really good article that a friend of mine, Rob, wrote called IR from a Different Perspective. And I kick myself for not writing this myself because it's fucking brilliant. But he basically wrote about doing IR engagements, not from the perspective of the actual technical IR engagement, but from how he would have to go in when he often wasn't necessarily wanted, because a lot of times the technical people on the ground don't want you. And he had to like work through gaining trust and like almost escalating privileges to people who could help him get shit done so that he could do his job. And it's a really, really interesting take on like the social and like soft skills base of any technical person. And you might read it and be like, wow, in this context, like it feels outlandish, the amount of stuff he had to do as a highly paid consultant to do his job. But it's called IR from a Different Perspective, and I strongly encourage people to read it because I think it's just phenomenally written and a phenomenal perspective on that.
It's so important. I feel like this comes back to when we were talking at the beginning, which is how do you get people to do what you want them to do? I try to screen companies before I even get hired to make sure that they at least have some semblance of care towards information security, because I have fought that battle. I've won that battle, and I have absolutely zero desire to ever fight that ever again. But hey, each to their own. Some people are like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to convince this company to care about information security. They're going to care about risk. They're going to see why it matters. I'm like, you do you, because I'm done. I just want my CEO to care, C-suite to at least understand what it means to the business to have a breach. And then from there, that's the platform that I want to work from. I will say that the food bribes, so good. I will say that one of the benefits to being cis female in the workplace is I can have the excuse of just like, oh, I just cooked too much. Oh no, I just made 3 extra pies. I am so sorry. I'm just gonna put these in the workplace. Just let me know.
I can make pies too.
I just accidentally made 8 dozen extra cookies. Right? Here, have them all.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm
learning how to bake. Yeah, go for
I bought
it.
like $300 in high-end Nerf guns, like the rival guns, and took them in and
Nice.
started an impromptu Nerf fight on a weekend. Oddly enough, though, it's probably worth mentioning that there are times when things don't work out, because I later heard from the employees that I took them in to up morale on that they thought it was unprofessional that I joined in. And that's not a knock on them. It's absolutely not a knock on them. Like, that was the culture of the place, and I didn't realize it at the time. But, you know,
Yeah.
I tried something and it did not work. But at the same time, like, that was probably the most outlandish thing I've ever tried to do.
That's pretty great.
I had an example of that where this is back before InfoSec, when I was a corporate trainer, and I was acing my surveys. I was doing such a good job. I was, I know Hackman was talking about when you feel like you're the hottest shit. I was like, oh yeah. There was cupcakes being handed out for leadership. I grabbed a cupcake and I went into one of the new hire classes and was just talking to them and eating a cupcake. And evidently that was completely unacceptable because they weren't allowed to have food in these training environments. And so when I came in eating a cupcake and talking about, work and what we're planning on doing and training in general, that was just such a jerk move. I think they gave me a nickname and everything. They were just absolutely done with me. It was hilarious. In retrospect, it was hilarious. It was not fun at the time.
Oh, yeah. To touch on that, there are going to be things that happen in the briefings and the communications you have with other people that at the time will suck. But years later, you can look back on them and giggle a little bit. All right. And we've all had those. See everybody laughing right now?
Oh, yeah.
That's why.
So
we've all had that interaction. We've all had that briefing. We've all had that communication where, oh my God, I should never speak ever again. And we're all still here. You're going to have that and see. Go ahead. Somebody else.
So when I was consulting, I got put on an IR, and it was the day before my birthday where I had vacation, and it's 4:00, an hour till I log off. And somebody goes, I need you to get on the scoping call. I said, I'm on vacation in like an hour. Well, don't worry. It's not going to take the weekend. I said, it's going to be weekend work. I said, no, don't worry. It's not going to be weekend work. I said, oh, it's going to be. So I get on. The company, 50% of their network completely fucked with malware, right? And like, this is the scope of this case and the size is not something that I had done. So of course I end up getting the case. I end up working the case. We're going through like the first night. I'm like, well, I don't have a nice way to tell you that you're kind of fucked. You should probably start re-imaging. They're like, we can't do this. And I'm drowning at this point. Like, this is early in my incident response career. Like, I'm drowning at this point, and I can get a hold of no one from my team because everybody else is gone. Anyway, like, long story short in that, like, through that experience though, the guys that I was working for, the clients, like, I still talk to them. Like, we're friends and we chat and we hit each other up every once in a while and see how we're doing. And I took this, what was at the time I thought was going to be like the worst experience of my career, and I forged these really positive bonds with people as we figured out the situation together to a certain extent. And, we got them cleaned up in like 4 days. It was great. Like, everything went fantastic. But at the same time, like, you go from this really, I think this is going to be a really shitty interaction to, hey man, happy birthday. How's it going? Like, how have you been? I haven't talked to you in a little while, because we went through this experience together, and there's a lot to be said to that. Yeah.
I mean, adversity, if you get through adversity well, you build really strong bonds with people. It's a very real thing. Some of my closest friends are also my coworkers, because we've been through some shit, over a decade plus.
Oh yeah. You get really tight with the people that you're in the trenches with. And it's really easy to get really tight with people that you're in the trenches with, which is why, to go back to a lot of the earlier conversation, like from a leadership perspective, having that balance of the right collaborative type of people is so important to me, because these people need to trust each other and they need to work together and they need to not be like jackasses to each other most of the time. Like, fights break out, like, it happens, but
yeah, I think communication really comes down to being your most authentic self. And that's going to change as you progress throughout your career and your communication, the way you interact with people, the way I brief now compared to the way I brief, 10 years ago or 2009 when I first started getting in the game. I shit you not. I gave a brief where I showed a commercial for like 2 minutes, and then I talked about random security stuff. The way you communicate with folks is going to change throughout your career. And I think just be cognizant of that and who you are as a person in your career is going to change as well. And that's going to affect how you communicate. I think the biggest thing is to be open and realize never lose sight of transactional versus interactive relationships now. And I think everyone will agree, we're more senior in our careers. Mostly because, I'm old as shit. We're senior just because we're old, not like by skill set. The relationships we have now, the communications we have now are more interactive. That's the relationship building. I think what I would advise to people that I wish I would have done differently, earlier in my career, my communication, my relationships were very transactional, and I wish they would have been a bit more interactive than what I am now.
This is what I will say. I had a CISO, same one that I was talking about with games, who had a motto of, when you go into a conversation with someone, assume no ill intent. If you can go into a conversation with someone assuming that they're not out to get you, you can have a much better conversation. I tend to expand on that a little bit, maybe a little bit more pessimistically, but at the same time, I love to have my ideas challenged. I hate to have my intellect challenged. And there's a very fine line between those two things. But for many people, challenging their idea is indeed challenging their intellect. And that's something that individuals can learn, that those are very, very different things. And it all comes back to, are you assuming bad intent? And if you as a person, you will have such better interactions with people and such better relationships if you can go into those relationships assuming positive intent.
So the hardest part about doing that is picturing your career, oh, you're a threat intelligence team at the White House. Oh, you're working in DOD. Oh, you're working at PennCert. You assume bad things. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, we all want to do the right thing.
We just have wildly different ways to do the right thing.
Right.
And those are worth being discussed. That's why I love people challenging my ideas.
All right, gang. I got to drop off. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
No, thanks for coming out tonight. Appreciate it.
See you, Mick.
Wanted to circle back, actually, make sure we covered this. Someone dropped a question in. How do you show to your management, the powers that be, the value that you provide, so that you get your raises, you get your kudos, you get your responsibility, your promotions? I don't know, like your pony, like what? I don't know what your compensation structure of the company looks like. Hopefully, it's not solely equine based. But
no, it's Cheerios actually.
Oh,
Cinnamon Toast Crunch if you do really well.
Well, hey, there you go.
No, I'm really excited about this one, if I may, because this is a question that I like a lot, and this is a question that I actually hear a lot from people that I talk to, especially end of the year, promotion time, stuff like that. This is what I tend to tell anybody that I talk to. And I'm speaking as a manager, but I'm going to speak from the perspective of the individual contributor, which I will call IC, because that's significantly shorter. You as an IC are allowed to have expectations of your manager. In fact, you should have expectations of your manager. Some of those expectations include things like this. What will it take to get me promoted? In a trackable, realistic, non-bias format. You are owed that, in my opinion anyway. And I'm not going to say that this is the most common thing in the world, because I don't think it is. But I do think you are owed that from your manager, and you have every right to keep on your manager until you are provided that thing that gets you to that next level. You are owed honest feedback on what you do, and you are owed knowing where you need to be to go to the next spot. Now, what you are responsible for is documenting those things that you do, conversing about those things that you do. And yes, absolutely, come in, me techie. I lost my place. Documenting the things you do, conversing with your manager about those things that you do, and being a proponent for yourself. I can tell you as a fact that there's going to be shortcomings that exist in a manager IC relationship a lot of the times. You have to tell them what you need from them, and then it's on them to tell you if that's realistic or not realistic, or if they can meet it. Sometimes they can't, and you find other silver linings there. But I think at a bare minimum, you're owed honest feedback and an honest path to what comes next.
And I would say that you are absolutely owed all of those things. I agree 100%. You may not be in an organization where they're able to give that to you for whatever reason. Maybe that's not something that they're capable of doing because the framework isn't in place. Maybe your management is, just not interested in your growth and the company's growth and doing right by you. You may need to find a new job, unfortunately. Not every place is going to be able to give that to you.
Or a new manager.
Absolutely.
Or a new play manager. The game.
Yeah, it's not necessarily just a new job. Like within an organization, there could be a lot of other places that you could pivot to that could get you those things that you need.
Absolutely. Yeah. So new manager, new job, new new role within the same org, or you could choose to work within the system and improve it if you think that's a possibility. I have worked places where we weren't getting those things, and when we we kind of got all banded together and said, hey, we'd like some professional development, please. They went, oh, crap. Yeah, we need to do that. Let's actually build that. But I'd say that's probably less common than I would probably hope. But, you're going to have to kind of feel the situation out.
So I just jumped on because, sorry, I'm going to jump in real quick. Because how can we left and, someone needs to be like, oh, wait, no, actually, all you guys are pretty super loud, so it's fine. Anyway, actually, I have a contribution to this. So I'm going to jump in and drop it in. And that is be a self-promoter. And that doesn't mean bragging about the things you've done, but owning the things that you've done. If you did something cool, it's not arrogant to tell others about the thing that you did or to take ownership of any of that. And this is particularly a problem with women and with other minority groups who've kind of been, where there's been societal expectations that they're kind of behind the scenes. But, that taking ownership of something obviously in a respectful way, giving any extra credit to others where it's due, just has to be part of your own, of the package that you build, that you present to, your manager or anyone else, and that will get you recognized. And keep track of it. Flag emails that call you out and praise you for the things that you've done, and have them as ammo for the next time you have a meeting with your manager to talk about your raise or whatever. And then the second thing I'll add to that is also call out the achievements of others, especially the people that aren't doing that self-promotion. I used to work desktop support, and we had an amazing help desk manager she did everything. She handled an entire student population, faculty, staff, didn't even think about it. She did amazing stuff, but she was not always the best at standing up and being like, yes, this is all the work that I've done. So frequently, in meetings or whatever, I'd be like, hey, so, the other day, this person did these really great things, and I think we should recognize that. Because not only is it good for them, but it presents you as someone who's keeping an eye on everything. If you're the person that has your finger on the pulse and you can actually show that to others, you'll get recognition far beyond just your immediate coworkers and your managers.
If I can add one line to that, also, you might quickly find that advocating for others will in turn have those people advocating for you, which is really, really valuable.
Yep. All right, I interrupted Ace Guy.
No, you're not interrupting. one of the things I mentioned playing the game. So I feel like it's really important to understand how your specific organization recognizes people. Knowing the metrics, you have to know the game that you're playing in order to play it, or choose not to play it. But until you get that, you're going to be in the dark. Someone's going to be able to manipulate you in a way that you might not like. Knowing how the metrics are created, where the raises are coming from, what raises happen when, what gets put into those raises. Those are all questions you can ask. And honestly, if you don't feel comfortable asking your direct manager, you can ask HR. I guarantee you it's a stereotype. There's almost always a sweet older lady in HR who's willing to answer your questions that you're asking. Especially if you're coming in a place feel like, I want to do better. And you bring that like peppy enthusiasm, how I describe it, like the, yeah, let's go gung ho. And they'll be like, oh yeah, here you go. And they'll give you all the list of things. And once you know those roles, you can then manipulate the system to benefit yourself and benefit others. Like when Techie says, like, I can't tell you how many times that I've been like, hey, if you want to raise, you need to be sure you do X, Y, and Z to people that I know weren't doing it. Be the one, seek the knowledge, and then share that knowledge. And that will absolutely come back to you in the form of both long-term and in the short term. I can tell you that my current organization, they do something silly. It's these like little like kudos things that's in our HR portal that no one really ever looks at. But it's so simple to be like, hey, this person did a great job on X, and I will go in and I'll submit it and I'll send it off. And they'll be like, oh, you didn't have to do that. Oh, it's okay. I'm like, yes, I had to do that. I'm glad that I did that. And now you're actually thinking about the system and are likely to actually participate in it for me. Granted, you don't always think about it in that transactional sense. It feels good to have people feel good, so I don't care if it's reciprocated. But functionally speaking, psychology, sociology, it will get reciprocated in a percentage of what you put out, which I think is a great investment.
And even if that's not something that you personally value, and this is something that I've struggled with, because I like getting kudos. I like being, having nice things said to me and about me, but it's not something I necessarily thrive on or like crave. And it took me a long time to come around to the prospect of, okay, a lot of the folks you're managing need that or actually do want that. Not everybody. That's like a Gen Z stereotype. But it's the kind of thing where I found that, okay, the more I put into that and the more that I actively acknowledge and recognize people, the happier they are, the better job they do. And it's just better for everyone. So like, why am I being this old curmudgeon asshole? Like, stop it.
One of the main mistakes I think a lot of people in leadership make is that they take a cookie cutter approach to how they deal with their people.
Yeah.
Without taking the time to understand that every person kind of needs unique things within reason, mind you. But every person is a bit unique and needs unique things. Like I have people who don't necessarily want good feedback. They only want critical feedback because they're hyper-focused on personal development and getting better. I have people who need good feedback to function. It doesn't mean that I don't provide both to them, but I make sure that the quantity is within the realm of where they're going to get the most value and within what they need, rather than taking well, you know what, fuck it. This is how I manage. So like, you're just going to have to deal with that. Very much to our earlier points before, right? Like humans are complex. We can adapt to meet the needs of other people. And as leaders, we have to. At least that's my strong opinion on the leadership side of that.
Yeah, I'd say that actually directly talks to the term of like justice versus equity, and treating people as they need to be treated in order to bring them up versus treating everyone the same because that's the rule. That's not how it is. I can say just from both a work perspective, even more from a parenting perspective, me and I have an older sister, we are incredibly different in personality. And I even remember after we were both adults and we had a conversation, she'd be like, they treated you so much differently than me. I'm like, yeah, because I am so much different than you. Like, we both needed different things. So I didn't think of anything of it. So from the leadership, the only feedback that I would provide in addition to that is making sure you're transparent about why you're doing things to different people. Be like, hey, they asked me to give them every single positive thing that I think of. They want me to tell them that out loud to them. Cool, I can do that. This person over here, they literally want to be ignored unless they're not hitting their minimum metrics. And then it's time to check in. Hey, how are things going? What can I do? So on and so forth. As a IC, because I no plans in any future of becoming anything but an IC. I appreciate when my boss does things differently for different people, because that is how I think as a mindset. But if I wasn't that type of person, it would be very jarring. It'd be like, you're giving this person like daily check-ins 15 minutes and you're only spending 30 minutes to me once a week. Yeah, because they asked for that.
No, and that's
like,
that's a really good point to bring up. And a lot of that kind of guiding tends to happen in a little bit more of a localized one-on-one fashion. Like, I'm not necessarily going to give people's goals and ambitions to the rest of the team. They're going to tell each other that for the most part. I have that kind of team. I'm very lucky. But no, that is a really good point to bring up. Like, the other thing that is really, really important is transparency. Why do I do the things that I do? And I mean, a lot of it's just, you should know where my headspace is so that you can challenge my headspace if my headspace is going in the wrong direction. The other part of it is you should just know because you should know because I trust you. And if I didn't trust you, I probably wouldn't employ you. So I might as well actually treat you like I trust you rather than that I don't.
The concept.
And hopefully you have a manager who's also willing, during whatever your check-in cadence is, to say like, hey, is this appropriate? Do we need to change how we're interacting? How the different ways that we communicate and interact with each other. If you don't, that's something you should definitely bring up to your management and say, hey, don't just sit there and stew.
And that is, it's not a leadership only tactic, by the way.
Right.
Like what we're talking about, understanding different people and how to approach those different people to make sure that those people are getting what they need from those interactions. That's essentially been the theme of the night. Like, I take it into the leadership side because that's what I do, but it is not a leadership specific thing. And if it's a skill that everybody as an individual can learn, and it's one that I strongly recommend if there is a takeaway from tonight, that is the one that I recommend that people learn, is that everyone is different, and knowing your audience and knowing the people will get you so far in this industry and so far in your career.
I have a story about that, actually.
Shoot, let's do it.
Two of those points. The first is regarding communication styles. I used to work at a certain very fruity technical company on the retail side, and I did inventory at this fruity technical company retail store. So I worked at one location, and I worked with a really cool dude for a couple of years, and then he transferred to a different store and got promoted to a management position, basically lead of the inventory team. So about 6 months after he started, I transferred to the store too. Only this time I was working under him, and I went into it knowing like, hey, this guy's cool. Like, we hung out, like we get along. Like, I know I can work with him. Well, he was completely different. The second he became a manager, he had no idea how to handle people, and he talked to everyone the exact same way. He had his customer service voice on, and I realized at one point when we were standing outside at 6:30 in the morning before the store opened, because inventory, unfortunately, I don't know how I ever got it up at 6:30 in the morning, but I realized that as we're standing out there, chilling before we got into the store, we were communicating with no problem. But the second he walked through the door, his manager persona took over. And we had such a horrible first couple months trying to work together because I couldn't understand what he was trying to tell me. I finally identified that he was using this customer service persona on me and it wasn't the right fit, and actually approached him about it and explained that when we're just casually bantering outside and he's a direct and honest person with me, that's how you communicate with me. And that really set off a light bulb for almost every other interaction I've had in my career since then. And it is that, you know, everyone has a different way that they communicate. You can't paint people with the same brush, and doing so can actually hinder your relationship and the subsequent work that follows.
Can I add on, or can I add a comment on that first story?
Yeah.
One of the things that I always hated, and I don't do this because it drives me nuts, is this concept that, like, from a hierarchy perspective, sure, I am technically above someone, but I've never liked the management style where the manager has to be above people and has to feel like they're above people. It's never really worked for me as a style either, which is why I haven't lasted at companies where the employees that I had expected me to act like I was above them or better than them, because I've never seen my job as above or better. I've seen my job as different. I am there because of this set of skills. You are here because of this set of skills. We are both necessary for different sets of skills, which means I can still make jokes and have fun and joke around with the team and many would probably say that I'm a very unprofessional manager in the way that I approach things. It's very casual. It's very, you know, a lot of people, when they get to management, it's like, oh, you better dress up. Well, I don't believe in wearing something that puts me above my team. I don't like that style. I don't want to feel like I'm better than them or give off the opinion that I'm better than them, because arguably they're probably more important than I am anyway. Let's be honest. They're the ones doing the work.
Yeah.
So it just that style has never resonated with me. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I wanted to tag on this. I think the manager, I actually followed this manager from 2 different companies, and then he left me again. So still grudge about that. But he would come into every single training class and explain to, this is a call center, explain to these tier 1 billing call center people that he would not have a job without them taking those phone calls. And that style of, I think that's a servant leader's type of style. It's by far my favorite type of leader. Like, you wouldn't have your job, you wouldn't get your paycheck if these people weren't doing X, Y, and Z. And I feel like that's really important from an IC as well, because I will say this is sometimes I get caught up and be like, this is the security stuff. This is what needs to happen. And I'm like, if they can't do their jobs, I don't have a job. If our developers can't do the code they need to do and get this through the gates and get it, granted, it needs to be secure, but if they can't do that job, then I don't get a paycheck, because then we don't have any customers. Understanding that to a degree is really important, because that is I don't see that completely outweighing security risks, but that is a weight to security risks. I think it's hilarious because every single security job has always talked about the CIA triad, or whatever it is now, the quad or 5. They keep adding stuff to it. But the triad, one of the key portions is, can people do the work that they need to do? And I feel like that is something that consistently gets forgotten by people. And I have made that my focus at my current job, and it has paid dividend after dividend after dividend. People will reach out to me to want to work with me, to want to do what I'm asking them to do, because I'm phrasing things. I'm still asking them to do the exact same thing as one of my coworkers, but I'm phrasing it from the perspective of, I understand you need to do this, but this is why I'm asking you to change this behavior. If you can give me a reason that outweighs this, okay. I'm not going to argue with you.
It's the very simple perspective of if a team, like leadership or not, if you are willing to watch someone's back, there's a high likelihood that they will be willing to watch your back in turn, that they will help you because you're willing to help them. That's the crux of soft skills, essentially, in a workplace. If you are willing to help, many people will be willing to help you, and you will build a relationship as the person who is willing to help and listen and understand. And because of that, they will go to bat for you. And that goes so far in building your career, because you could be the smartest technical person in the world, but if everybody hates you, and maybe your promotion cycle requires that other people write feedback about you, well, who's going to write feedback about you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uteki, did you have
caveat,
another story? Oh, sorry.
Did actually.
okay, one tiny caveat to that is make sure you set healthy boundaries, especially for people who are naturally givers. So people who naturally want to take care of others. You just set healthy boundaries. Make sure, as long as you align those boundaries to your existing policy, you're fine. Then you can just, it's not on you. Just be like, hey, this, I'm saying you need to do this because of this. So just refer them to the terms and conditions that they signed when they got hired, and you move on with your life. You're not going to hurt that relationship. I would even say that sometimes I've been really blunt to the point, just up to the point of mean with some developers on their opinions on security initiatives, and their reaction has actually been positive, not negative at all. You have to gauge your audience, so it's important to know who you're talking to, but some people just want to be heard. And if you acknowledge what they're saying and then counter that with why this is happening, especially from security initiatives, they go, oh, okay. And then it's just the tag end of it being like, hey, you know what? If you see something like this and you have a concern about it, reach out to me. They never will. But that ask will endear you to them in a way that any other reaction just won't. So sometimes telling no to people really does positively.
Thank you so much for saying that, because I forget that, because I don't take a whole lot of shit as much as I'm open to listen. And I forget that a lot of people are naturally a lot more giving than I am. And I forget about talking about setting boundaries. But Uteki, please, story time.
Yeah. So funny story. I'm not actually a naturally social person, which probably comes as a shock because I think I've talked on literally, I've been a moderator, or I presented a lot, or I've been on panels and stuff. It is a developed skill. And probably like 10, 15 years ago, I definitely consider myself very socially awkward. And then I started, like I mentioned before, I worked at the retail arm of a very fruity technical company, tech company. And one of the things I did was I moved from inventory onto the floor and did tech support, mostly for mobile devices, also, desktop computers. And the reason that I did so was because I knew that I was lacking in customer service and tech skills, or the customer service related to tech skills. And I wanted to go into the technical side more. Customer service is always important, and customer service is 100% soft skills. And essentially what I figured out eventually by flailing around a lot was people have patterns. You can do pattern recognition with kinds of people and their personalities. When you get enough practice, and maybe there are some resources out there that would have helped me at the time, you realize that, okay, this type of customer thinks that they're right. So you talk to them differently than you would talk to someone who thinks that they're very technical. When you work with someone who thinks that they're very technical, but they're not, you align with them on what they think, and then you expand on it a little bit, and you drop in little nuggets that, where it's like, oh, I'm sure, you know that blah, 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 blah. So based on this, blah, 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 blah. It's all tactics. And like anything else, it's a game that you can learn. And the more that you learn it, the more that becomes natural. And suddenly you go from not understanding why people are freaking out to being able to intuitively maneuver how you handle someone to get the best out of that interaction. And I think that for me is really the crux of soft skills, is that, kind of recognizing that everyone has a different set of rules that they go by, that their interactions are based on, and adapting to those.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to learned behaviors. Not everyone's going to do this stuff naturally. In fact, I'd say most people probably don't. I certainly don't. It's practice, being very intentional about your interactions and how you deal with people, and being willing to going to be very honest with yourself and self-evaluate and say, hey, this went well, or this didn't go well. How can I make that go better the next time? Do I need to make amends?
It never hurts to ask other people that either.
Yes.
Like, I am notorious for, after I've had a tense situation, like if my boss was present, I am notorious for asking my boss afterward, like, is there anything that like that felt tense? Is there anything that I could have done better in that situation? Did I handle myself appropriately? Like, I am notorious for seeking feedback from other people about my behavior, and not just from a perspective of like self-assuredness, but also to get realistic feedback on how I might be able to handle those situations better in the future. And you can do that from a teammate. You can do that from your boss. You can do that in a lot of places where you can get that outside perspective, because we are all the heroes in our own stories, and it's really hard to be self-critical. So it doesn't hurt to get that critical feedback and be open to it from other people, or more than that, to ask for it about very specific situations, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we talked about doing that in a scenario where, you know, somebody's aggressive or you don't get along, might not work all the time, or even some of the time. Doing that with people who you do get along with, who you're friendly with, who you're professional with, is something I think that will go well, especially if you had like a weird or a maybe not the best interaction. Like if it went south, like they're going to feel that too, and they probably want to talk about it, and that's hopefully assuming you're both adults, that's going to only improve next time.
I'm gonna just drop in that we're running out of time, so I think we have time for like a couple like last notes, and then we're gonna hop over to the Meetup voice channel on Discord if anyone wants to hang out, because it's been a long week and I need another beer. So I'll kick it over to G to decide if you want to do like last notes or another question.
Yeah, I've been going through stuff. I think we've covered pretty much everything. I think maybe the one we haven't explicitly covered is how do you approach initiatives or projects that have tasks in multiple different teams? And
we've covered that. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be the same advice, right? But I mean, Sky, if you have you shook like you have something you want to say about that.
Yeah,
I'm going to give the same advice I've given.
Yeah. So for specific teams, especially if it's in different verticals and they're doing the bulk of the work for what you're asking, you're the one generating work for them. You have to be very, very clear on what you're asking of them. And what we talked about before, which is making sure relationships aren't transactional, needs to happen before. When I started an organization, I tried to get invited to all of the more social events. I try to socialize with each team prior to needing them to do something for me. If you can't do that, so for whatever reason, if you can't do that, then it's very important to be explicitly clear, but not condescending, what you're asking them to do, and being very, very, very quick to respond to any questions that they might have. That responsiveness, and especially if you're just like, hey, I don't quite understand this. Like, oh, of course you don't. I didn't do this. The self-deprecating thing really does work that way. Like, oh, no, I should have included the document for this. My apologies. And then that slowly builds a relationship towards it. And then when you're done with that project, you'll have a much stronger bond with that team than you did before. Even if you have been socializing with them. It's just, this is something that on the blue team, like it's very, very rare for any large scale project to not be just siloed to you. Like most of those projects require other teams to be doing the work and making the changes that you need done. And so it's really important to make sure you're not just what I consider just lobbing something over the fence. It's just not something that might be okay once or twice, but if you do it more than that, they're going to get annoyed and they're going to stop doing the work as quickly. They're going to complain. They're going to take it personally, and then you have even a harder barrier to overcome.
I usually take a ping and prep mentality, where if I have contacts within that department, I might shoot them a ping and go, hey, just want you to know I have this thing coming down the pipe. I'm going to schedule a meeting in like a week to talk about it. Like, here's the really rough notes. Nothing that I need from you right now. I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'm going to schedule some time so that we can talk about this thing.
I'm going to jump on that because I think that's a great way to put it. So I'm actually technically not in the security on the security team. My approach for everything has been, I'm adjacent, I'm security adjacent. I'm embedded in a different team, but I have wormed my way into building relationships with all different teams all across my organization. So oftentimes when I have to work on cross-team collaborations, I already know half the people, which is awesome because it makes communication so much easier.
Yep. I mean, when I came in to build my program, I essentially spent the first year doing a combination of building relationships with other departments as well as laying the framework for my program. Most of the second year was focused on cross-team collaboration and building those relationships, which ultimately is a lot of my job. And then, coming after that part, now we can start to really get into doing stuff because we've built that framework that lets us be successful when we try to do stuff.
Yeah. G, actually, do you have any contribution? Because I think your last notes, and then we'll cut over to the Discord voice channel.
I think all the major beats have been covered. Really, communicating with people the way they want to be communicated with, trying to be an adult, be understanding, be humble, especially when you're working with different teams. Giving them the heads up is a big, big deal. Always appreciated. I got nothing else. I think we can probably wrap.
Awesome.
And everybody here, all of you are capable of these things. I talk to a lot of people in security who are like, well, I'm not good with people, or I'm not capable of this. All of you are capable of these things. Trust me, you are. Every single person is capable of learning how to deal with other people. You absolutely should never sell yourself short and think that you're not capable at something. And that's where I want to end. At least for me.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, I'll see everyone in the Meet-A-Mentor Meetup voice channel. It has a 25-person limit, and that's about the number of people that made it this far. So congratulations. See y'all over there. I'm going to get another beer. Thank you so much to all the panelists, including No Hack Me, who had to drop off a little bit early. G, awesome job moderating. Everyone, really appreciate the answers, and we'll see you over in Meet-A-Mentor, the Meet-A-Mentor Meetup Discord voice channel.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Take care.